The fire had died, the storm had not. Across a white, endless land, the snow howled and the night swallowed every sound. No fire, no shelter strong enough for the wind. Yet they lived. When even the embers surrendered, warmth did not vanish. It sank into memory, into earth, into will. Have you ever felt that kind of cold? The kind that tests your bones like a question? Tonight, we remember how the people of the plains, the Lakota, the Cree, the Pawnee, outlasted the blizzards when even the fire gave up its breath. They found warmth not in flame, but in patience. Not in firelight, but in faith. The storm spoke. They listened. And in that listening, they endured. To the northern tribes, winter was never an enemy. It was a teacher. When the wind screamed across the plains and the snow buried the lodges, survival became a quiet conversation between man and nature. The Lakota said, "The cold is alive. It watches how we move." So, they learned to move slower, to breathe quieter, to live in rhythm with the storm itself. They did not fight the winter, they followed it. Each gust of wind carried a lesson: patience, humility, respect. For them, warmth was not just heat. It was wisdom passed from elder to child, from earth to hand, from silence to understanding. Even in the heart of the blizzard, there was harmony, the kind that comes when life and nature breathe together. They built warmth from below, not from fire, not from smoke, but from patience. The lodges stood half buried in the ground, a quiet understanding between man and earth. Each layer of soil became a shield, each breath beneath the frost became a promise. They knew the ground was alive. It spoke in silence, it held memory in its depth. When the wind screamed above the earth, whispered back with calm. Lodges were built low and round their frames, woven from willow and ash, their bellies pressed into the soil. Walls lined with woven mats, tight as skin-breathing warmth back into the air. Buffalo hides hung heavy overhead, their weight sealing the heat, their scent carrying stories of life. Inside, the air moved slow, like breath beneath a blanket. The earth below held steady at 50 degrees, while outside, the world froze solid. No flames danced, but the walls glowed faintly with life. The ground became their companion, a living hearth that asked for nothing but trust. They rested in its arms, listened to its slow pulse, and let the rhythm of soil and heart merge into one. When the storms came, they did not fight them. They lowered themselves closer to the earth, closer to warmth, closer to life. Every shovel of dirt was an act of faith, every lodge a prayer carved into clay. They did not build against the cold, they built with it. They did not challenge nature, they learned her breath and breathed with her. Today we call it earth-sheltered architecture. Back then it was instinct, a wisdom older than fire, passed not through words, but through survival. And in that deep silence below, the snow warmth was not found. It was made from patience, from trust, from the living body of the earth itself. They turned to the grass when even the earth grew cold. Dry prairie hay gathered before the first frost packed thick beneath their beds like a promise of return. Each hollow stalk held the breath of summer, warm, golden, still alive beneath the snow. The wind outside howled across the plains, but beneath the hides, the hay whispered. It crackled softly like distant fire, carrying the faint scent of sunlit days long gone. That sound, that dry, fragile murmur, was life reminding itself it still existed. No feather mattress, no woven blanket from trade, just grass hand-cut sun-dried and laid down with care. The work of hands became the work of memory, each handful a fragment of warmth saved from the past. They learned that the secret to warmth wasn't in fire, but in what fire once touched. The sun's heat trapped in the hollow bones of grass waited patiently through the months of ice. When laid beneath the sleeper, it formed a barrier, a wall of quiet defiance against the frozen ground. The Lakota elders said the earth breathes through the prairie. In winter, they slept on its breath, and as they slept, they breathed with it, slow, deep alive. The warmth came not from burning, but from remembering. Every few weeks, they replaced the hay. Old stalks flattened and dampened, losing their spirit. New grass, crisp and golden, restored the song of summer beneath their backs. That renewal was ritual, a cycle between death and return, echoing the seasons themselves. In the quiet of the teepee, the straw whispered through the night. It was a lullaby of patience, a reminder that warmth could be built without flame. It wasn't soft, but it was honest. It wasn't comfort, but it was life. Modern science calls it insulation. The old ones called it grace. The breath of summer, still giving, still waiting, still warm beneath the snow. They learned to build fire without flame, not with wood or spark or stone, but with one another. When the storms came and the lodges froze, they moved closer, their bodies forming a circle of breath and heartbeat. Each inhale pulled in the warmth of another. Each exhale gave it back. They wrapped themselves in layers of fur and tanned hide, soft from the inside, thick from the outside. Each one a memory of life, taken with respect, returned now to protect life once more. It was a sacred exchange. The body became its own fire. No smoke, no ember, only the slow rhythm of survival. In the darkness they could hear it, the sound of sleeping hearts keeping time. The sound of the living, refusing to let the cold win. Breath became heat, and heat became faith. Mothers drew their children close. Fathers wrapped their arms around the group, and elders whispered prayers that floated like mist above the hides. They did not separate warmth from love, nor love from faith. All three were the same. The air inside grew heavy with breath thick enough to hold a pocket of life against the winter. It was not comfort, it was endurance. Not silence, but a kind of living prayer. Every breath shared became a vow: we will outlast the cold. We will keep each other alive. The Lakota believed warmth began in the chest, in the place where courage meets breath. When the world turned white, they closed their eyes and let the fire inside remember. Even now, in the coldest places on earth, soldiers, wanderers, and dreamers do the same. They breathe into their shelters, trapping the warmth of their own life. Different century, same wisdom. The body still is fire. They learned that even the earth itself could hold fire. In some lodges, they buried clay pots in the ashes of dying flames, let the embers kiss them red, then carried them inside, still glowing, still alive. The clay drank the heat slowly, like the ground absorbing sunlight. When pressed near the sleeping place, it released that warmth back steady, silent, patient. Through the night, under buffalo hides and willow mats, the air stayed mild. The frost stopped at the door. No sparks, no smoke, no flicker in the dark, just breath and earth speaking to one another. They understood what the land had been trying to teach all along. Fire is not a thing of flame, but of memory. The clay remembered the heat it once held and gave it back with grace. Its surface glowed faintly under the hides, a quiet orange heart beneath the snow. Each night, they repeated the ritual: heat carry, rest wait. Patience became warmth. Discipline became comfort. Faith became survival. To the Lakota and Pawnee, the act was sacred. The fire outside was wild. The fire within the clay was humble, a tamed spirit of the earth itself. They said the pots were alive, that they listened to the fire and whispered it back through the night. It was not power they sought, but balance. Not brightness, but endurance. The glow beneath the hides was enough. A single ember could outlast the storm if it had the courage to stay quiet. Today, we would call it thermal mass design, the science of storing heat in stone and clay. Back then, it was devotion shaped by hand, a prayer molded from mud, a conversation between fire and patience. When the last embers died, the clay still remembered, and so did they. When stillness was no longer enough, they called on movement itself. In the frozen silence of the plains, they learned to make fire without flame, without wood, without sound. They moved, slow, steady, alive. The Sioux hunters called it the moving fire, They stamped their feet to wake the ground, swung their arms to stir the air, and breathed deep until their hearts burned again. It was not dance, and yet it looked like one, a quiet ritual of survival, a rhythm older than words. Each motion small, circular, deliberate, as if the body remembered something the mind had forgotten. The old one said, "When the fire leaves your hands, you must find it in your blood." They believed movement kept the spirit awake. When they walked, warmth returned. When they stopped, frost crept in. So they listened to their bodies, to the wind, to the invisible drum beneath their ribs. The cold tried to freeze them from the outside, but inside the rhythm fought back, a slow living drumbeat of will. They were not fighting the winter, they were breathing with it. Even now in the high mountains and the polar fields, soldiers and wanderers still move the same way, swinging, pacing, whispering warmth into their lungs. Not to chase heat, but to awaken it. Because fire is not just what burns, it is what moves. It is what lives. And when every ember dies, movement becomes flame. When the blizzard howled and the night seemed endless, they did not curse the storm. They listened to it. They understood that the cold was not an enemy, but a reflection, a mirror held up by the earth to test the spirit. The storm stripped everything away. It took sound, it took motion, it took the world down to its breath. And in that silence, something else began to speak. They found warmth, not from flame, but from stillness, not from firelight, but from faith. The warmth within was quieter, deeper. It lived beneath the ribs in the place where patience becomes prayer. They learned that heat fades, but meaning endures. A man can lose his fire, his tools, his home, but if he keeps stillness, he keeps life. The elders said the body remembers how to wait, that the earth itself teaches through the cold. When the wind screamed across the plains, they bowed their heads and let it pass through them, not against them. To resist was to break. To accept was to endure. In the blizzard's heart, they sat together in silence, no words, no fire, only the steady rhythm of breath. Each inhale was a spark, each exhale a small, invisible flame. The storm was not punishment. It was a teacher. It reminded them that the greatest warmth is not the one that burns, but the one that stays unseen, unflickering alive. When dawn came and light returned to the frozen plains, the people rose without hurry. They did not celebrate survival. They simply remembered. Because the fire outside could die, but the fire within never. When the fires went out, they remembered. Warmth begins from within. The storm had passed, but its voice lingered in the valleys, a soft echo over snow and stone. No flames, no light, only the slow breath of the earth returning to stillness. They rose without haste, the people of the plains, their hearts carrying what the fire had once taught, that survival was never just about heat. It was about attention, about presence, about faith. They gathered the ashes not as loss, but as memory. Every spark, every ember was a story, a small proof that warmth lives on where patience endures. The sky cleared, the wind quieted. Silence returned like a friend wrapping the world in calm. They had no need to speak. They simply knew. The lesson was simple. When the fire fades, you do not chase it. You become it. Because warmth, true warmth, is not something you find. It is something you carry. And as the first light broke over the frozen horizon, they stood still, listening, breathing alive. When the fires went out, they remembered warmth begins from within.